When I saw that I was the first speaker of this part of the conference, I decided to use the crop that I work with, the pecans, as a, let's say, agriculture spacecraft. Basically, to leave Texas, where pecans is mostly known, and go around the world to see what we can do with pecans and what other countries are doing with that, and some of the issues that pecan cultivation has and will have in the future. This is a map that shows the native distribution of pecans. You can see there's the main area is the central southern United States. It's a contiguous region, which of course offers tremendous genetic variability because you can find pecan trees as north as Illinois, but you can find them as south as the state of Oaxaca in Mexico, okay? So there's also a lot of many isolated pockets where pecans, native pecans, are found, which is very important on an ecological and of course scientific point of view. Here's a picture that just shows the tremendous genetic variability that the species has. This is just some of the cultivars or varieties that are grown in Texas. You should know that there's actually a book that lists over 1,000 different pecan varieties, okay? And they're all, well, most of them are actually photographs and described. So again, tremendous potential for the working with the species. Some of them, actually, the ones that you see that have Native American tribe names are the product of breeding, active breeding programs, mainly carried out by USDA, just outside College Station here on Highway 50 on the way to Brenham. If we look at where pecan cultivation has gone, we can pretty much say that it has gone everywhere but north. Pecans don't produce very well when you go to colder climate, but if you stay in the south part of the United States and Mexico, pecans can grow very well. And that's really where the industry has gone in the last, mainly 50 years, okay? So you have a lot of pecans that are now grown in the east, but they're grown also extensively in Mexico and also in the west, okay? In fact, if you look at this chart here, that's just, I put together some information from the National Agricultural Statistical Service, and I broke down the production of pecans in the last 20 years, separated between the western states, Arizona, California, New Mexico, and Texas, and indicated in red, and the eastern state, every other state where pecans are grown. You can see that production in the east is pretty much flat, but in the west is growing, okay? And also, not only it's growing in the United States, but I told you that pecan cultivation has extended south of the border. You can see the last 15 years here, production in Mexico has seen a threefold increase from about 50 million pounds produced to over 150 today. Okay, so really a lot of more and more land is cultivated to pecans. This is a picture that I took near Hermosillo in the state of Sonora, Mexico, and we see here pecan growing in the desert, in a place where not many crops could be grown, but pecans does extremely well in desert condition because, of course, the impact for pests and disease is minimal. Not only the United States and Mexico are the states where pecans are grown, but there's a production in Peru. Also Peru, I have seen orchards grown in the desert, on the big desert that pretty much flanks the Pacific coast. There are a lot of pecan trees grown over there. Production is growing in Argentina, and there's pecan trees in South Africa, and there's a pretty big production in Australia as well, also grown in desert climates. China, okay, it's a small dot right there, but production isn't growing. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. Now, we have a problem because you understand that we have a species here that requires extensive amount of water. I can tell you that on average, a single pecan tree on a summer day needs approximately 200 gallons of water, okay, just in one day. So you understand, you multiply that by the number of trees you have in the orchard, frequently in the order of thousands, and multiply by the number of days that you have in a growing season, that's really millions of gallons of water that are necessary. And we are planting pecan trees in the desert. Now, this is just the background, but then you have problems like we had this summer. These are just some of the quotes that were collected by the Texas Pecan Grower Association and collected by, from the growers. You see, we are in year 5 of the drought. It may never rain again. Even the tropical storms want no part of us. Some growers have run out of water 90 days ago and are having to use different water sources. Very short crop. Some estimated that the crop this year is between 0 and 50% of what they usually get. One grower says that the trees are very stressed even with irrigation. I'm sure the growers are stressed too, not just the trees. Here, another grower says that he estimates about 5% of the crop. So we really have multiple problems because, again, the industry is moving to places where theoretically it shouldn't be, but indeed is successful. So just to briefly show you where our direction, our research is going, which direction, we decided, for example, a couple of years ago to take advantage of the fact that pecan naturally grows in some desert areas. I show you all those dots on the map at the beginning where pecans are naturally found. And we decided to go ahead and study those because if a tree is naturally found in a dry environment or in any species, animal or plant species, most likely has some mechanisms of adaptation. So we went ahead and studied anatomical characteristics of the leaves, in particular the number of stomates. And for those of you who are not in plants, those are the little pores that you find at the bottom portion of a bottom epidermis of a leaf that allows water movement, gas movement, okay, gas exchange, in particular water loss. We saw, for example, that indeed those pecan trees that grow where precipitation is lower, you see here, for example, 200 millimeters per year, they have a reduced number of stomates. So most likely, they consume less water. What does this mean? It means that we might be able to use that genetic potential there for breeding purposes, or maybe understand a little bit better the quality of the crop, the pecans, and maybe use those varieties for future plantings. Export, okay? Pecans are exported. Production is increasing, but we're exporting more and more. This is what the United States are doing. Just in the last decade, you see how much both import and exports have increased. In terms of import, we import mainly from Mexico. And usually on those years where our production is low, Mexico usually supplies our demand. But we also export a lot, and mainly to Mexico as well, but also Asia and the United States and the European Union and Canada. Okay. Speaking of Asia, just the last 5-6 years have seen a tremendous increase in export of pecans to Asia, and particularly China. Okay, about 1/3 of the current U.S. production of pecans is now going to China. So it's a tremendous amount. If you think about this, millions and millions of pecans that are being shipped and all the way to China, where they have developed a taste for them, and they call them the American nuts because they don't have a name for it. So, and they're very interested. And again, speaking of China, it's an interesting story there. I had the opportunity to visit exactly 1 year ago, and I visited because, of course, yes, right now they're importing millions and millions of pounds of pecans, but they're not just sitting there and looking these ships, arrive. They have started planting them, and actually this has made Texas growers very nervous, and they were not very happy that I actually went over there. I received a very interesting letter from some of the growers because they're afraid that I'm going to go there and tell these guys how to grow pecans. So they're growing pecans in several areas, but interestingly, they have a lot of native hickories. Okay, interestingly, the genus Carya used to cover pretty much the entire northern hemisphere, but then with the climate change and evolution and so forth, now there's isolated pockets, and there's several Carya, which is the same genus as pecans that are grown in China. For example, you see here you have Carya. This is Cathayensis and so forth. Okay, all these little pockets indicate. So this is, for example, one of the most popular Chinese hickories, and it looks a lot like a pecan tree. It produces round nuts, and they crack them, mostly by hand still, and they sell them, okay? And it's a pretty good product, very limited because they're still grown in the wild. It's not cultivated yet. But what is interesting is that they figure out that if they use pecan trees as a rootstock, okay, so basically they plant a pecan tree, then they cut it and they graft their own hickory, the Chinese hickory, on top, their productivity increases dramatically, and the growth rate of the Chinese, the native hickory, increases. Okay, so that's another way that we can see how a Texas, or let's see, southern North American crop pretty much can help agriculture in other countries, simply by serving as a root system of plants. So to conclude, this is just a short information about what we do, how we're trying to reach out to other countries and collaborate with them. But my challenge is that I see that the pecan industry is changing and moving to new regions. Okay, I mentioned Peru, South Africa, China, Australia. Okay, all with pretty much similar climatic condition. And the problem is that, as I mentioned, new challenges will be faced by growers in the next half century, or maybe even more. Okay, mainly because if we're growing pecan trees in the desert, we're going to have to face drought issues. We're going to have to face salinity. Excess amount of salts is frequently associated with doing agriculture in desert area because there's too much evaporation and not enough precipitation. So we need to predict and be scientifically ready to address these changes, and certainly do this with the global approach. Okay, we cannot do this independently. I know the growers are concerned that I'm going to China to see what they're doing, but I think it's better to learn directly from them what they're doing rather than ignoring that there is an agriculture over there. They're trying to actually solve similar issues. Okay, if you have a question or two, we might have a couple of minutes. If not, I'll be around for the rest of the day.
Something about the nutritional value of pecans, especially the sugar content for diabetes?
Yes, I actually originally had a couple of slides of that, but then I realized that maybe they were not, the topic wasn't really fitting there. But yes, we've also done some research on the nutritional values of pecans. It's a very nutritional product to actually export because it's rich in antioxidants. It has a very good fatty acid profile, mainly monos and polyunsaturated fatty acid, which are the good fats. Very low sugar content, just 5% sugar. So it's a good snack. So we can certainly promote that abroad, but we can also promote the cultivation of the species in places where maybe a nutritional food is certainly needed.